Look, stop waiting for that main character vibe to kick in before you actually start your essay. Your brain is literally lying to you just to keep you comfortable. I mean, we've all seen that study web aesthetic on our feeds, the perfectly curated desk, the candle flickering just right, the lo-fi beats playing in the background while you sip a matcha latte that cost more than your lunch, right? You're just waiting for that spark of inspiration, that academic weapon energy to take over so you can finally open a Google Doc. But here's the cold hard truth. That aesthetic, it's a total trap. See, your brain loves the idea of being a high achiever, but it absolutely hates the actual friction required to actually become one. It's tricking you into thinking that preparing to work is the same thing as actually working, you know? It's a neurobiological defense mechanism called productive procrastination. Your amygdala sees that 2,000-word research paper as a threat to your comfort, so it offers you a deal. Sarcastic. It says, hey, we'll do the work, but only after we find the perfect 10-hour playlist and organize our highlighter collection. You feel busy, you feel motivated, and you feel like you're doing something, but your word count is still 0. Challenging. This brings us to a massive question you have to answer honestly if you want to actually get ahead. How do you know when you're being genuinely productive versus just being busy to satisfy an ego-driven vibe? Serious. Look, most of you are currently falling victim to something way more dangerous than just being lazy. It's called the startup myth. It's the silent killer of your GPA and your career goals. And if you don't learn how to spot this lie, you're going to spend your entire 20s waiting for a vibe that is never actually coming. Let's get real for a second. Look, we've all been there. Firmly, you tell yourself you're finally going to lock in and grind, right? Sarcastic. But first, you need the perfect environment. Dryly, you spend 45 minutes hunting for that one specific Notion template just because it fits the minimalist aesthetic. Dismissively, you color code your Google Calendar until it looks like a piece of modern art. I mean, you might even spend an hour curating the perfect deep focus playlist because obviously you can't possibly be productive without the right lo-fi beats. Serious. In your head, you think you're being a high performer. You're setting yourself up for success. Direct. But in reality, you're falling straight into the aesthetic procrastination trap. See, your brain is playing a high-level game of hide-and-seek with your actual responsibilities. Firmly, this is what we call productive procrastination, and it's arguably more dangerous than just scrolling reels for 3 hours. Direct. Why? Because when you're scrolling, you know you're wasting time. You feel that low-key guilt. Serious. But when you're planning, your brain triggers something called planning dopamine. You're getting a hit of satisfaction from the idea of the work without actually doing a single lick of it. Authoritative. You've convinced your nervous system that the goal is already being achieved just because the system is ready. Firmly. But let's call it what it really is. You aren't preparing to win, you're planning to hide. Your brain is literally choosing the minor discomfort of organizing a task because it's terrified of the raw, grinding friction of actually doing it. I mean, it's much easier to spend 2 hours designing a life dashboard than it is to spend 20 minutes writing the first messy paragraph of that essay or making that one awkward phone call you've been ducking. You're trading your actual future for a temporary vibe. This busyness is the ultimate ego buffer. It makes you feel superior to the person sleeping in while your actual output stays exactly the same, 0. You're building a beautiful, expensive engine, but you're too scared to actually turn the key and see if it runs. But here's the thing. The aesthetic trap is just the gateway drug. The real reason you're stuck goes way deeper than just a messy desk or a bad template. There's a specific psychological glitch that happens the moment you actually sit down to work. And if you don't know how to override it, no amount of color coding is ever going to save your GPA. Look, we call this psychological glitch the startup myth. It's that deep-seated lie telling you that peak performance requires a specific mood, a curated environment, or some magic spark of motivation before you can actually begin. I mean, you tell yourself you'll start the assignment once the vibes are right, or once you finish that perfect Spotify playlist. But here is the cold, hard science.
Your brain is literally playing you. When you spend 3 hours color-coding a digital planner instead of actually studying, you aren't being productive, you're chasing procrastination-induced dopamine. See, your brain is wired to avoid discomfort at all costs. Real work is hard, it's messy, and it's honestly boring. So, to keep you away from that discomfort, your brain offers you a loophole, the planning high. You get a cheap rush of dopamine from the act of organizing, which tricks your nervous system into feeling like you've already achieved something. You're winning the setup phase while losing the actual war. Look, you've been taught that the cycle goes inspiration, then action, then result. That is a total lie. In the world of high-performance psychology, we reverse that entire equation. Inspiration isn't the engine, it's the exhaust. It's the byproduct of messy, ugly, unaesthetic action. You don't wait to feel like a pro to start working. You start working like a total amateur, and eventually, the momentum creates the feeling you were looking for in the first place. Seriously, if you're waiting for the perfect moment to stop procrastinating, you're going to be waiting until graduation day with nothing to show for it. You have to learn to move while your brain is still screaming for a break. But how do you actually override a biological survival mechanism that's trying to keep you safe in your comfort zone? I mean, how do you trick the brain into sprinting before it even thinks it's ready to walk? The answer lies in a tiny neurological shortcut that elite performers use to bypass their prefrontal cortex entirely. And once you see how it works, you'll realize you've been doing focus completely wrong your entire life. Look, enter the frictionless execution protocol. This isn't some soft life productivity hack. This is about optimizing your biological hardware to stop that startup lag that's literally draining your potential.
Step 1. Kill the pre-flight checklist. You know the vibe. You can't start studying until your desk is perfectly aesthetic, your color-coded pens are lined up, and you spent 20 minutes finding the perfect lo-fi playlist. Stop. That's not preparation, it's just procrastination in a trench coat. I mean, honestly. If it takes you more than 60 seconds to actually put your hands on the keyboard or pen to paper, you're losing. The protocol is simple. If you aren't working within 1 minute of sitting down, you're giving your brain a window to negotiate its way out of the work. Close that window. Step 2 is where we lower the stakes. Low-fidelity drafting. See, your brain is usually paralyzed because it's terrified of failing, so it just freezes up, right? You have to trick it. Spend the first 10 minutes intentionally doing the absolute worst, ugliest, most chaotic version of the task possible. Write the cringiest sentences. Solve the problem using the messiest logic. Directly, the goal isn't quality, it's movement. When you give yourself permission to be trash, the barrier to entry vanishes. Calmly, you aren't working yet, you're just making a mess. And a mess? A mess is infinitely easier to clean up than a blank page. Finally, apply the 2-minute entry. Tell yourself you only have to do the hardest, most soul-crushing part of the project for exactly 120 seconds. That's it. Anyone can survive 2 minutes of anything, right? But here's the actual science of why this works. Once you start, you trigger what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains are neurochemically hardwired to hate unfinished business. Directly, it's like a mental itch you just can't scratch. Once you break that initial friction, your brain shifts its priority from avoiding the task to completing the cycle. At that point, stopping becomes more uncomfortable than just finishing the job. You've effectively hacked your own neurobiology to keep you locked in. But even with this protocol, there's a hidden productivity trap that even the highest performers fall into. A mistake so subtle, it actually reverses all the progress you just made. And if you don't know how to spot it, you're basically sprinting toward a brick wall without even realizing it. This brick wall is what I call the planner's paradox. It's the seductive trap of the organized aesthetic. Look, I mean, we've all been there, spending 3 hours color-coding a Notion board, buying a new minimalist journal, or hunting for the perfect lo-fi beats playlist, while the actual work sits there untouched. Sarcastically, you think you're being productive, right? But you're actually just procrastinating in 4K.
The harsh reality is that high performance isn't about having the cleanest desk or the most optimized digital workspace. High performance is about your tolerance for the ugly start. Directly, you see planners wait for the perfect conditions, the perfect vibe, and the perfect level of motivation. But doers realize that the first version of anything, whether it's a term paper, a workout, or a business idea, is going to be absolute trash. And you know what? They're perfectly fine with that. The difference between who you are and who you want to be is simply how much friction you're willing to swallow. Directly, your brain is lying to you because it wants to keep you safe in the planning phase where there's zero risk of failure. But there's also zero growth there. Gravely, if you stay a planner, you stay a spectator in your own life.
So, here is the final play. We're closing the loop right now. I want you to look at that one task you've been dodging all week, the one that gives you that heavy, anxious feeling in your chest every time you think about it. Forget the aesthetic, forget the perfect setup. I want you to execute the 2-minute entry immediately. Open the document and write one terrible sentence. Put on your gym shoes and just stand outside. Do not think about the finish line, just break the seal. The moment you start is the moment you kill the planner identity and become a doer. If you're actually done lying to yourself and you're ready to stop playing small, I need you to do 2 things. First, hit that subscribe button and join the power of mindset. We don't do easy here, we do effective. Second, comment friction broken below to lock in this shift, then immediately close this video and go start that ugly draft. No more excuses. Get to work.